In the traditional history of ancient India, Chanakya is the ultimate political mastermind, a calculating strategist who orchestrated the birth of a superpower. Around 322 BCE, he reportedly discovered a young boy named Chandragupta, molded him into an emperor, and guided him to unite the fractured Indian subcontinent into the massive Mauryan Empire. The legend begins with a personal insult. After being shamed by the ruling Nanda king, Chanakya famously untied his topknot and swore a vow. He would not bind it again until that king was dead and his dynasty erased. To achieve this, he allegedly employed brutal psychological warfare and specialized assassins known as Vishakanyas, young women trained from childhood to kill political enemies with a touch or a kiss. These ruthless tactics were codified in the Arthashastra, a hyper-detailed manual of economics, espionage, and law that frames statecraft as a cold, mechanical science. For generations, this story has functioned as the definitive origin of ancient Indian politics, the tale of a visionary founding father engineering a state from the shadows. But when we look at the actual records from the Mauryan period, there is a total vacuum. We have absolutely zero documented proof of Chanakya's existence from the time he supposedly lived. The Mauryan Empire left behind a massive archaeological footprint. We still have their stone monuments, their brick stupas, and the remains of their capital cities. Mauryan emperors carved their administrative edicts and royal lineages into stone pillars across the subcontinent. Yet in all these contemporary records, the name of the man who supposedly built the empire is missing. We are left with a central mystery. How did the architect of an empire leave no trace in its foundations? Every detail of the Chanakya legend comes from texts written hundreds, in some cases over 1,000 years after his supposed lifetime. This timeline illustrates the gap. On the left is the Mauryan Empire's founding in 322 BCE. But the four textual traditions that tell his story, Buddhist, Jain, Kashmiri, and Sanskrit, only appear between 400 and 1200 CE. These later texts rely on standard folkloric tropes. For example, several versions claim Chanakya was born with a full set of teeth, an ancient omen that he was destined to be a power behind a throne. The Jain legend even claims he used alchemy to magically multiply his silver coins, turning a single coin into 8 to fund his rebel army. Some accounts describe him cutting open the belly of a poisoned queen to save the unborn heir, Bindusara, who was supposedly named for the bindu, or drop of poison, that touched his forehead. Analyzed together, these foundational texts read more like supernatural religious folklore than a sober historical record. The strongest apparent proof of Chanakya's reality is the Arthashastra, his legendary treatise, dramatically rediscovered on these palm leaves in 1905. The text is incredibly pragmatic, detailing everything from tax codes to the placement of spies within a royal court. Modern linguistic analysis, however, shows the text was not written by a single man in the 4th century BCE. Scholars have identified multiple layers of authorship compiled between 150 BCE and 300 CE. The attribution to Chanakya appears to be retroactive. Later dynasties added his name to the final paragraphs of the text to give their political laws the weight of ancient authority. Chanakya didn't write the Arthashastra. Instead, the figure of the mastermind was written into the text to provide it with legendary prestige. If Chanakya is a phantom, we have to ask why so many different groups were invested in inventing him. Centuries after the Mauryas, Jains and Buddhists used these myths to retroactively claim that the great emperors of the past were guided by advisors from their respective faiths. The later Gupta Empire used Chanakya's name on political treatises to link their own rule to a perceived golden age, using the legend to establish their own legitimacy. In the 20th century, Indian nationalists resurrected the myth to counter colonial narratives, using Chanakya as proof of a deep native tradition of pragmatic self-rule. That myth remains deeply embedded today. India's premier diplomatic enclave, where foreign embassies and high commissions are based, is named Chanakya Puri in his honor. While the historical man may be a phantom, the myth of Chanakya is remarkably real. For 2,000 years, it has served as an incredibly effective tool for shaping religion, political power, and national identity.